back in the early 1500s, the Catholic Church had a great deal of political power. Oh yeah. It had close alliances with many royal houses, as well as the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, the great power of the Church brought with it a fair degree of corruption. Imagine that. Among the most notable and controversial practices of that time was the selling of indulgences. That's a nice way to put it, isn't it? Indulgences. For Catholics of that time, sin could be divided into two broad categories. Mortal sin was enough to send you to hell after death, while venial sin got you some years of purifying punishment in purgatory. Purgatory, of course, is an interim state between life here on earth and the heavenly hereafter, as prescribed by the Church. Now, I went to parochial school when I was a kid. In purgatory, somebody told us that it was the same thing as hell, only you were going to get plucked out of it.
If enough people pray for you.
Yeah. But others told us that it was just the absence of God and the remorse of the things you did. Which sounds pretty hellish to me, but either way.
You still didn't go to heaven, did you?
Yeah. But by the 16th century, the idea that you could purchase an indulgence to reduce your purgatorial debt had become increasingly widespread. And like I said, after you could even hire a sin eater to come in and eat. Hoy. Religious leaders who wanted to fund projects would send out professional partners to collect funds from the general public for rendering services. Often, the sale of indulgences exceeded the official parameters of church doctrine. Now, because the partner might promise eternal salvation rather than just a remission of time in purgatory in exchange for funds, now some partners would threaten damnation to those who would refuse the offer. Indulgences could be sold on behalf of the departed friends or loved ones, and many indulgence salesmen used that pressure to great effect. Now, Martin Luther, the Catholic monk, found himself disillusioned by the practices of the church in which he loved. For Luther, indulgences and the church's approach to sin and penance more generally seemed to go against what he saw as the most important part of his Christian faith. If God really did send his only Son, Jesus, to die on the cross for the sins of mankind, then why were indulgences even necessary? If the salvation of mankind had come through Jesus' sacrifice, then surely faith in Jesus alone should be enough for salvation. So in autumn 1517, Martin Luther nailed his 95 thesis to the church door. Most of the 95 points in the document that was framed in the then common style of academic debate were objections of the practice of indulgences. His intent was to spark a debate within his church over a reformation of Catholicism. Instead, he and those who followed him found themselves at the forefront of a new religious movement known as Lutheranism. And by 1520, Luther had been excommunicated by the Catholic Church. Now, soon after that, he found himself on trial for heresy, under the authority of the very Catholic Holy Roman Empire. The Emperor declared Luther to be an outlaw and demanded his arrest. A German prince kidnapped Luther after his trial to keep him safe from his would-be arresters. In the years following the trial and the spread of Luther's dissent became the basis for a Lutheranism, and now calling it Protestantism. Protestantism often became the choice of individual princes who wanted to signal their opposition to imperial power. And when a prince converted, his entire principality was seen to have converted as well. Now, this led to a 30-year war from 1618 to 1648, where conflict between pro-Catholic and pro-Lutheran German princes built up into a war that killed up to 20% of Europe's population. Do it in the name of Jesus. Yeah, although Luther can be said to have started the Reformation, He was one of many reformers whose legacy lives on in different Protestant traditions. Switzerland saw the rise of John Calvin, whose own Protestant denomination, Calvinism, bears his name as well. And John Knox founded the Presbyterian Church of Scotland, and each denomination of Protestantism had its own specific theology and approach. But not all Protestant reformations were entirely idealistic in nature, because King Henry VIII famously established the Church of England, which is still the state church of that country today, in order to annul his marriage to Catherine, in order to marry Anne Boleyn. Now, nearly all Protestant groups, however, shared Luther's original objections to the Catholic Church. This brings me to my point. Just how many times did groups of people splinter off from the Catholic Church? According to a survey found online, the estimated number of church buildings accommodating Christian congregations is approximately 37 million. That's one for every 65 people. The same website indicates that there are 34,000 Christian denominations in the world.